Wache, Addition Hasan, Sahakuten, Kashishan Nishku, Mahikan Dodam, Mashkego. I'm really happy to be here today at 4 glorious weeks off of work. And it was so nice to kind of decompress and give myself the opportunity to refocus. The other side of that was having more time at home meant I was more aware of what was going on in the world. And I just became really profoundly aware of the intolerance that is being expressed everywhere about everything. And, you know, it just kind of kept niggling at the back of my mind that, you know, where am I intolerant? What don't I have patience for? Where do I sit in judgment? And so when I was thinking today about what I wanted to talk about, I thought about, you know, well, we could talk about we're still in flux and trying to decide how our work life is going to look. But yeah, we've talked about that before. Just this intolerance thing kept coming up. So I looked up the definition of intolerance. And this is emotional intolerance, not physiological intolerance. Intolerance, an unwillingness to accept views, beliefs, and behaviors that differ from one's own. You know, and that just really struck me. And what does, you know, because there's lots of things I'm intolerant of. There's lots of things that I sit in judgment of. But why do I? That's the question. And what I found with looking at my other things that I sat in judgment of, how is that reflected in me? Once I understood, once I had insight, and once I had empathy to that judgment, it was gone. So then I got thinking, well, what's the opposite of intolerance? Well, the opposite of it is empathy. You know, because if you really believe that you have a right to be who you want to be, to believe in what you want to believe, both religious or spiritually, as well as politically, that you have the right to dress any way that you want to. You have a right to follow your customs and traditions. You have all the rights that you want. If you have all of those, don't you think the next person wants the very same thing? And so if we really look at that, empathy is about knowing who you are, what you value, what's important to you, what you stand for, what you would fight for, what you would die for. And knowing that that is so personal, because not only is it about your culture and your spiritual practices and your community, but it's about you and your individual experience on life. Even if you come out of a family of 12 people, if everybody wrote what they experienced, it would be 12 different points of view. That's just the way our brain works. But if you want all of that, why wouldn't you want all of that for everyone else? And so if you really do want all of that for everyone else as well, then I had to learn, and I still am reminded all the time, that I have to be tolerant and I have to pay attention to the judgment that pops up in my head and address it right away. Because that way of looking at people is relatively new for me in the grand scheme of my 71 years. You know, it's back to that reminder that a therapist told me one time when I was really, really tired of being really, really angry. And I said, how long am I going to have to deal with this anger? She said, how old are you now? And I said, 38. And she said, well, when you're 76, you should have a good balance on it. Because she said, you have to spend as much time doing it in the new way as you've done it in the old way. Because it's an unlearning and a relearning. And just as I'm saying that, I realized, I hope I do have that balance by the time I'm 76. But back to intolerance. Just listen to what you're intolerant about, what goes on in your head, what brings up that judgmental part of you. Just become self-aware. That's how we change the world. It is as, as simplistic and yet as problematic as it's really up to each one of us to be what it is we say we want. And so if we want, we must understand that others will want that too. So really think about that. Really help yourself get to that place of self-awareness, to move that intolerance over to tolerance and into acceptance. That, you can have a forest full of trees. They're all going to be different, even if that forest is just cedar trees. And that you may have heard that teaching before. In a forest full of cedar trees, you will never find two cedar trees the same, because they're meant to be different in that collective. So you need to understand and accept that for you. So it's not an easy task. Nobody likes to face their ugly bits, but when you do, it really frees you up. Takes a lot of that stress away that other people should be doing things in a particular way. So I hope you find this interesting. It's certainly not, I'm not preaching. I'm just observing what I see and what I see in me, and where I think the pandemic has brought us into a great place of self-awareness. And we can see the intolerance. So take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you again soon. Be quick.